not because of the government, but in spite of the government. And so I have tremendous respect for my Indian business friends because in face of such hindrances, if you will, yet they have succeeded. But the other thing about the United States is that I think really geopolitically has changed the world forever, perhaps, is the energy self-sufficiency. The United States was strong not because of energy, the technology, the education, tremendous. But now, in addition to it, you have this energy self-sufficiency. I think the United States is just unmatched. Anybody who says that China is a competitor to the United States, as far as I'm concerned, come from Mars. Well, anyway, I don't want to go into too much detail. No one, just tell you one thing. A friend of mine who is an admiral, three-star admiral, showed me on his aircraft carrier, and he said, Ronnie, I give this aircraft carrier to the Chinese and they won't be able to run it. I said, really? I said, why? He said, look at the young lady down there, 23-year-old, just graduated from college. And she's the one that directs all the flights that go in and out, right? And that lady makes the decision every, I don't know, 2 minutes or whatever, that is worth $500 million US. Because she has to decide whether the plane lands and it fails, you better take off again, or it lands. And I said, you know, I hate to see anybody denigrate Chinese so much, but you got a point. So anyway, enough said. So that's the analogy. China, having said my word about China, I happen to believe that, 7%, 8% growth for the next 10 years of China is very doable. My friend Ronnie Singh, Dr. Mantak Singh told us that India should be able to do 7.5 to 8. And I think China should be able to do the same for the next 10, 15 years. They say, the difference is that China has been working already for 20 years at that rate. But let me just give you a very simple 3 or 4 points why I think China can do that. Number one, urbanization is still ongoing. Still, you have 12 to 15 million people from the farming countries every year moving into the city. And everyone that goes to the city, every year they produce something like 10,000 RMB. So it costs $1,800 US of economic activities. And when you multiply it by 12, 15 million a year, it is a tremendous number. In the past, it has had even more, but now even for the steady state level for the next 10 years, if not longer, is 12 to 15 million. So urbanization is a powerful driver of the economy. Number two, the use of technology. Many of the Chinese companies, many people know me as a real estate guy. That I do, but many people don't know that once upon a time I owned more factories than real estate projects in China. And the use of technology in the mainland of China is still, overall, leaves a lot to be desired. I think that the usage of technology, you don't need to create technology. I'm just talking about the usage of it. It's going to bring efficiency and productivity up, and I think that will also create economic activity. The third one is, anybody who has done business in China knows it's an extraordinarily frustrating experience. Myself included, coming from Hong Kong, who speaks the language, no cultural barrier, a little cultural barrier. The irrationality in the system is humongous. And the removal of those irrationalities, I believe, in China should be sufficient to also become a driver of the economy. Then finally, let me offer you one other. A lot of people say China cannot rely on infrastructure development, public investment for economic growth. I said think twice. Recently, I need to go from Shenyang in northeast China to Tianjin, a city not far from Beijing. Straight line, maybe, I don't know, 500, 600 kilometers. So if there's a fast train, well, they're so famous for these fast trains that go 200 kilometers an hour. If you take a fast train, it takes 2.5 hours. I was in a hurry, and there's no flight that fits my schedule. I said, take the train. I found out that there's no train between Shenyang, which is 7 million people sitting, to Beijing yet. And then from there to Tianjin, that's fast. But whatever the case is, for me to travel 500, 600 kilometers in two cities that one has 7 million people, the other has 10 million people, took me 9 hours by train. Eventually I decided to drive this faster. So the last mile is always the most difficult. Whether you are talking about telecoms, optic fibers, gasoline, electricity, telephone, whatever, the last mile is the most difficult. And China, yes, Dr. Henry Wang said in the last session that they're 100,000 kilometers, the biggest in the world, all that stuff. But what they don't have is the last mile, and that is going to be tremendous. And so, whereas I'm not suggesting that China should forever rely on infrastructure development, public investment to drive economy, but the need there is too humongous. Of course, they will struggle in the interim to move also supplemented with consumer spending and so forth. So I think that China should be doing okay. That's not my worry has always been on the social stability side of things rather than the economic side of things. My final point relates to the Middle East. A lot of people worry about China, Japan, and all those islands and all that stuff, and I worry about it too. But I said before it blows up, most of it something in the Middle East is going to. Sorry, the president of Tel Aviv University is sitting right in front of me. Professor Clapter, I'm afraid that something in your part of the world is going to happen before something really bad happened in my part of the world. And let me tell you one thing that I think is a really interesting phenomenon. Israel found offshore gas. We don't know how big it is, but it's going to be pretty big. Golda Meir, the former prime minister, has a famous saying. She said, "What the heck did Moses do? For I don't know how many years, 40 years, led us through the whole circle around, and eventually led us to the only place in the Middle East that doesn't have oil." Well, unfortunately, she's not alive, but if she's alive, she should know that. No. God took me to the right place. They have offshore gas, and it's very, very big. So last week, 2 weeks ago, I was in Jerusalem. I was in Israel talking to some friends, and they were all trying to sell gas to China and Japan and Korea, because as we know, oil prices uniform. It's basically one market in the world, but not gas price. There's a lot more, in Japan and China than in the United States, for example. And I said, wait a second, you have offshore gas in the Mediterranean Sea. I think that in the future, selling to Europe is going to be a tremendous thing. Consider this: Europe has basically got out of the Middle East since 1948. The United Kingdom and France, right? The United Kingdom out of Palestine, out of Egypt, out of Iraq, France out of Syria, Lebanon, and so forth. I think that for the first time, perhaps, the engagement of Europe with the Middle East, in particular with Israel, is going to be renewed because of energy. Think about this. Where does Israel get it? Where does Europe get its energy? Russia, West Africa, Middle East. Russia has proven itself again and again as an unreliable partner. I go to Ukraine every year, and in the winter time, a lot of people freeze to death if the Russians were to turn off the pipe, and they did twice. And West Africa in itself is a rather unstable place, and it's very long distance. If Israel truly has offshore, not truly, if they do have offshore gas, there's no natural enemy to ship gas from Israel to Europe. I don't know, maybe offshore platform to gasify them. And I was talking to David Petraeus, and he was saying how, well, you have terrorism problem. I said, yeah, terrorism is dangerous. You don't know when they're going to strike, where they're going to strike, and how they're going to strike. But if you know where they're going to strike, then it's defendable. And let's face it, the Israeli Air Force is awesome. And so they should be able to defend that very, very well. And then through that, you ship it to southern Greece, to southern Italy, southern France, to Spain, and then go north from there. There's no natural enemy. The U.S. Sixth Fleet is king. Why does Russia want Crimea? Of course, for the last 200 years, they've been trying to get a port, right? But they still have to pass through Turkey, the Bosphorus. So I think that the Sixth Fleet is there. That is to ensure that the transportation is okay. So I think that the whole world is changing in front of our eyes just in the last